Thank you for taking the time to view our presentations, and thank you very much to the NGX for the introduction. So my name is Ade Adetola, and I'm the General Manager for Europe and Africa at Bridgewise. What is Bridgewise? Bridgewise is a firm that uses AI and machine learning for the analysis and recommendation of financial instruments. So what we're trying to do, our aims, I'll put them in four different ways. The first is if we focus on equities to start with, is a democratization of equity research. So at the moment, let me maybe have a picture of me there, and I'll go to the third slide. So at the moment, there are 44,000 publicly listed equities in the world. Only 20% of those have analyst coverage. So the 80% of publicly listed equities do not have equity coverage globally. And the vast majority of that equity coverage is in English. So what we're able to do is to give you fundamental technical ESG analysis on any publicly listed equity anywhere on the globe, in any language. At the moment, we've translated to, I think it's up to 16 languages. It takes us 4 to 6 weeks to translate to a new language. So what we're looking to do is to democratize equity research. Traditionally, it's been the institutions, the asset managers, and the hedge funds that have had access to this type of high quality research from banks. What we're looking to do is to place that type of research across anybody that's looking to invest in a public equity. So democratization of equity research. The second is objectivity. Because it's our models that generate this research, it's independent. You know, very often the people who write research papers on issuers and corporates, they have other parts of their business that have a commercial relationship with those same institutions. So there's always been a perception and sometimes an explicit bias in terms of the way the research recommendations are written. We are fully objective. One great example of that actually is that I think it was 2021. So Netflix was all the rage because everybody was stuck home with COVID. And there was all the analysts that covered Netflix had a buy recommendation on it. With our tool, we actually had a sell recommendation on Netflix at that point, and its performance over the next 12 to 18 months then tapered off. That's one situation where the objectivity of research being created by a tool is actually superior sometimes, because there may be other reasons why some firms are rated the way they are. So democratization, objectivity. The third is information access. I had a great conversation earlier this week with one of our users. So he is interested in the microchip space. Microchips is in all these devices we use. And apparently in Taiwan, I didn't know this, but 5 of the largest 8 microchip companies are within like a 30-kilometer radius. And he's interested in this space and wanted to make an investment. And so he used our tool to identify companies within the sector. So he's identified a theme and a sector he's looking to invest in. And then he was able to use our tool to actually identify the specific companies that would make sense for him. So it's providing that type of information access that is one of the powerful things about our tool, and that we think would help an exchange like the NGX. So from the NGX perspective, it's creating increased access and awareness to my colleague earlier spoke about the outperformance of the NGX relative to some of the developed markets, but the increased access to this information will hopefully lead to growth in the capital market space in Nigeria. The fourth point is in some frontier markets, there is just no research. It's not that people don't decide to research a specific company. Firms have moved out of that space. They don't think it makes sense for them commercially. So we're actually a tool that enables people to have access to research. So our aims are really democratization of equity research, objectivity, broad information access, and the fourth, which is kind of linked to the third one, giving, even in frontier markets, even in relatively obscure public instruments, information within these sectors. Okay, the next slide talks through some of the type of companies we've covered. So they fall into 3 broad buckets: retail platforms, stock exchanges, and then institutions, sell-side and buy-side institutions. The next slide talks through the point I made earlier, this concentration of liquidity and market cap. So we've done some research, and the 3 largest exchanges there, NYSE, NASDAQ, and Shanghai, they represent 50% of the market cap. of all public exchanges. Now, there's obviously value outside of that space, and using our tool, you're able to look to identify this value. It's interesting. I was listening to something yesterday. November, there's been a massive run up in November on the S&P, and I think it's up by nearly 20% just in November. But all that outperformance is related to about 5 or 6 big tech stocks. So it may look like it's a broad-based market move, but it's all been driven by a handful of stocks. What our tool enables you to do is to identify potential outperformers outside of the bigger names that are massively covered. So this slide talks to some of that concentration challenge, which we're looking to help address. The next slide goes through, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it goes through an example of one of our screens. So we've got, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it's got some of the liquid names in the NGX on there, and it's got the filing date, the last filing date. One of the advantages of us is once the filing is public and has been given to the right authority, we're able to process that within 48 hours. It takes most traditional research houses 2 weeks. And then it gives you the type of information you will expect: market cap, the sector weighting, and then the recommendations. Not all of our clients take the recommendations piece. Some take the research, but you have the option to take the recommendation piece. And so it gives you fundamental research, technical analysis on the back of that. Now, the next slide goes through goes for a specific entity. So we've got Dangote Cement here. It gives you a summary. Again, the details of the filings, the fundamental ratings on the breakdown, strengths and weaknesses. And then on the right-hand side, you actually have a peer analysis. You can compare to peers within an exchange, within a sector, or even internationally. So looking to give you that information access. The next slide talks to the language capabilities. Most research is provided in English, and we obviously do that. We've done up to 4 to 16 languages, I said earlier, and if there's a need to be translated into any other languages, looking to address this democratization point I mentioned earlier, we're able to do that. And what we're looking to do is not just to create information and analysis. We don't kind of want this analysis by paralysis. It's actually to drive people to engage in the capital market. So we're looking to create meaningful information that leads to more engagement, more trading. We have about 1.5 individual users that use our service at the moment, and we're super excited to partner with the NGX and looking to grow the capital markets in Nigeria.